Take a sip, actually. What the fuck is up, everybody? Welcome to my channel. I'm Kyle, and today we're going to be talking about my experience with inpatient therapy. Before beginning the video, I wanted to give a trigger/content warning for anybody out there. We are going to be talking about sensitive topics such as depression, suicide, and being in an inpatient therapy hospital. If any of these things make you feel uncomfortable, I advise you not to watch this video. Otherwise, I'm going to get right into things. I wanted to start out with talking about why I needed inpatient therapy. To begin, for about 2 to 3 months leading up to my hospitalization, I had been off of my medication. I had been on medication for probably about 9 months and then suddenly had to stop. So because of this, I had been off of my medication and it led to a major depressive episode. I also was supposed to start working at a new job the day I got hospitalized. There was a lot of pressure on me to start this new job as I wasn't making any money and really couldn't afford anything I needed in my life. I wasn't paying for rent, I couldn't afford my groceries, and it was putting a lot of stress on both me and Lauren. In the 2 weeks leading up to my hospitalization, as I said, I was in a major depressive episode. I wasn't sleeping a whole lot, I was overeating, and I was not taking care of myself. I was basically playing Mario 64 8 to 10 hours a day, trying to speedrun the game. The day I was supposed to start my job, I was trying to play Mario a little bit before I went into work. I went to turn on my switch, and it didn't turn on. The light didn't show up on the dock, and I was like, what the hell's going on? I pulled it out of the dock, it still wasn't turning on, and it seemed like my switch was completely dead, even when I plugged it into the charger. This got me obviously upset. I started thinking, well, I can't afford another $300 switch, I can barely afford to pay my rent, I can barely afford to get food, how am I ever going to get this anymore? I can't believe this is broken, and I started having a massive breakdown. Because I didn't want my roommates to hear me crying and sobbing uncontrollably, I went out to my car. As I was in my car, I started feeling like I really wanted to die. I really just did not think that there was any way I was going to get out of this other than killing myself. I called my girlfriend, Lauren, who was at work already, where I was supposed to be working at in about an hour, and I start leaving her messages, just screaming, sobbing uncontrollably, saying how I wanted to die, saying how I wanted to kill myself, and she wasn't answering because she was at work. Well, eventually I decided, well, I actually need to go to work too, so I'm going to drive, which was probably a bad idea because I drove to work in tears, barely being able to see what was going on the road, and it was probably extremely dangerous for me to be driving at that point. So I got to work safely, thank God, and then I start calling Lauren again because I'm having another breakdown as soon as I pull up into the parking lot. I call Lauren, she comes out of the store, and she's like, I need to take you somewhere, you are not okay right now. So she takes me to a community health center. They recommend that I go to inpatient therapy. Then they put me in this little room basically and say, you're going to be here until an ambulance comes to get you. And then I ended up at a hospital about 3 hours later. So that's how I ended up in inpatient therapy. Now I wanted to talk about the good things and some of the bad things about inpatient therapy. Now, this is also just my personal experience at one mental health facility. Some might not be like this, some may be better than others, some may be worse than this one. I don't know, but this is my personal experience and I really wanted to share it with everybody. So, let's start with the good things. 75% of the staff was amazing. That's one of the great things about this place. They were really great to talk with, they were knowledgeable, they had good conversation, it was good to share stories with them, you got to learn something about their lives, like their family, where they graduated from college, and they just were fun to talk to. Now the second thing that was really fun was actually the recreational therapy, and specifically the rec therapist I think is what made it so great. She had a really great way of getting everybody engaged, having fun activities, and really making me think about what had led me to come into the hospital and what I was going to do when I got out. I will say that rec therapy was probably part of the reason I was able to get through my inpatient experience. The third thing that was really great about the experience was about 10 to 20% of the patients I became friends with. I haven't talked to them since or anything like that, but while I was there, talking with them, sharing my experiences with them, just getting an insight onto different things, like how different mental illnesses work and how they felt, was really interesting and just gave me a different perspective on things. And then the fourth and final thing that was good about this place, and I'm sure there might be other ones, but these are the four major ones I can remember, is it got me back on my medication. It was really important that I get back on my medication. I think that being off of it for about 2 months was not great for me and was what led to my huge, massive breakdown. So them getting me back on my medication was a huge thing, and I definitely thank them for that. Now I want to talk about some of the bad experiences I had there. So while 75% of the staff was great and fun to talk to, another 25% of the staff was just rude or straight up forceful with their language. When some of the other patients would act up or get a little, violent, the staff wasn't really great with them, at least this 25%, and kind of made it seem like they were almost pushing them towards being more violent, which isn't a great way to do things, especially in a mental health facility. The second bad thing I would say is it seemed like people with dietary restrictions had a hard time eating there, either making sacrifices, eating things they normally wouldn't, or just going without food. So that seemed a little weird and kind of put me off, and I was a little, I don't know. And also, they didn't give you a lot of time to eat. You had maybe about 20-25 minutes for lunch, which I feel like I had more time in high school to eat lunch. So that was kind of, ridiculous to me. The third thing I say that was a negative part of my experience was the length of my stay. I was there for 12 days, and when I first got there, they told me it was probably going to be 2 to 5. Then I found out that the average length of the stay was actually 7 to 10, and I ended up staying for 12. I didn't know how long I was going to be there, and being there for 12 days was really, really difficult, and probably one of the worst parts of my experience, being away from home for that long. And being away from home is actually the fourth thing that I think was so bad about being in inpatient therapy and why I never want to do it again. I was gone for 12 days without Lauren, without Zora, without anything that made me feel comfortable. A good bed, having a roommate that didn't snore, and just all sorts of things were, missing. And it feels so much better when I was back in my own home and I felt more comfortable than I ever could have felt in that hospital. And then the fifth and final thing, I think this is one of the most major things that makes this an overwhelmingly negative experience for me, was that 80 to 90% of the patients that I didn't get along with made me feel extremely unsafe and uncomfortable. They would either say or do violent things that made me fear for my own life sometimes. The staff did their best to make people settle down and stop saying and doing those things, but you can't really make people do those when they're not around, so it was kind of hard. And I roomed with somebody who, just said and did things that made me feel very uncomfortable. I could barely sleep when I was there. It was not a great experience, and that's kind of the good and the bad things about my inpatient therapy. So yeah, there were some parts that helped, the rec therapy, some of the patients, some of the staff, getting back on my medication, but there was far more negative experiences there, to the point where I still have nightmares to this day about going back to the hospital. I shouldn't have nightmares about going back to a place that's supposed to help me, yet I do. So while it did get me back on my medication, and being away from home, being with all those patients that made me feel unsafe, it was so hard to relax. And I just gotta say, I would not do it again, and I try to avoid it as much as possible. So that's about it. I'd, invite you to share your experience with inpatient therapy down below in the comments. Maybe you've had a similar experience. Maybe yours was more positive. Maybe yours was more negative. I'm not really sure. I want to hear what other people have to say about this, because this is just my one time being in one facility. So anyway, that's about it for today. Until the next time, I've been Kyle, and I'll see ya. Goodbye!